As Jay mentioned, Eric joined our team just about a year ago. His anniversary is coming up, and excited about that, but more excited for him to share with you some of the really cool things that he's been working on. Before we get to the fun stuff, though, just a little bit about who we are at Repairify and Aztec. Aztec is the leader in electronic vehicle diagnostics and calibrations. And you'll see a couple of our devices up on the screen there. Electronic vehicle diagnostics are if your car is involved in a collision, there's so many cameras and radars and LiDARs and other elements in that vehicle that require work when a vehicle is being repaired. Our folks do that work. So we connect virtually into tools. Our the Gen 2 device, that one sitting on the blue cabinet in the upper right-hand corner, is actually just a communication tool, and it allows us to connect to any car anywhere in the world that has internet connection and attach an OEM, original equipment manufacturer scan tool to that vehicle. But Aztec is just a part of the puzzle. The bigger part of the puzzle is Repairify. And Repairify is the umbrella organization, if you will, that Aztec is under, but you'll see there are also many other brands. So we focus on diagnostics, calibrations. We also do remote services, and we're starting to get into the world of automotive intelligence. We conduct a large number of scans each and every day, and so we have data sets that lots and lots of people are very interested in. So we, within Repairify and Aztec, again, you can see some of the other brands under there. Special shout out to ATG, the Automotive Training Group. They deliver seminars and webinars focused primarily on the mechanical side to technicians around the country. But for Repairify itself and Aztec, we have over 400 technicians that are certified, and Eric will talk more about it, what ASE and ICAR are. Over 22,000 customers. We have 8 patents that keep our lights on, so to speak. And in 2020, we repaired over 1.2 million vehicles. And so far, we have in 2021, over 6 million separate events in repairing cars that were conducted. We scan about 6,000 cars a day, and then we calibrate about an additional 1,000 cars a day. So lots of folks doing lots of work to keep all this running. About 2 years ago, we decided as an organization to really enable our learning side and start leading as education as one of our leading indicators to our customers. And to do so, the organization created the position of Vice President of Learning and Development, and we hired a gentleman by the name of Chris Chesney into that role. So I report to Chris. Chris is extremely well known, particularly in the mechanical automotive space, with over 30 years experience, and he's done some remarkable things in those 30 years. So he was brought on intentionally to help us up our game in the world of learning and leveraging technology to achieve that. So much of what you're about to see was brought to the table by Mr. Chesney, and as a part of the growth of the training department, we added several people to it, including Mr. McClellan as the senior training manager. As Jay mentioned, a really unique fit because Eric used to be a car guy, has literally written the book on the GM LS engine, written 3 of them actually, published in Hot Rod magazine. So he's been a car nerd for many, many years. And actually, when he first started and my boss met him, my boss said, "Weren't you the guy who did that blog of a build out on a car?" And so it turned out that my boss had been a follower of Eric's many years ago. So very much the right guy for the job. So with that, I will turn it over to the legendary or infamous Mr. Eric McClellan.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. If you're not familiar with the name McClellan, it is a Scottish name, and Scottish tend to be storytellers. So you're probably going to hear some stories, and you're going to see some kind of threads go out through the presentation, but I highly encourage folks to chat with me in the chat box. I will follow it as we go. To me, the worst question is the question that never gets asked. So please do ask as we go. Even if I'm going to answer it later, I've already answered it. Please just ask the question anyway. I want people to walk away really feeling like they got something out of this. So please do ask your question, and I'll answer them as soon as possible. I'm like Paul Harvey. I'm in and out like a ninja. You won't even know I was there. Let's talk about the agenda for a little bit. We're going to do actually an in theme with this session. We like to think of things a little bit backwards here when we do our trainings and make our materials. So we're going to start actually with the breakout session first, and then we're going to talk about some ducks, and then I'm going to talk to you about adaptive learning, and then I'm going to tell you basically what we've come up with as far as a solution. So the premise of our breakout session started about 6-7 months ago. I went to a meeting, and I met a person who did you probably can see this in the photos, it's Lego Foundation in the upper left. Presentation by Lego, and they are positioning themselves as a learning company using the Lego brand. And the presentation started out like this. It says, 2 plus 2, everybody knows the answer is 4. Okay? He says, that's memorization. That's not learning. That's not, applying what you've learned. That's just pure memorization. He goes, but what if we gave you the answer 4 first? And then we asked the audience, the learning audience, give me your solution. How did you get there? So if we give you the solution first, then we get to see your process. We get to see how you think. We get to see how you solve solutions. And there's infinite number of solutions to get to the answer of 4. So start with the answer first, and then use the audience and their process and their journey through to get to the answer of 4 to teach you not only about the audience, but how you can teach them differently. And then they will actually learn more in the process. So here's my premise, and here's what I'm going to do. We're going to do our breakout session. This is going to be a little different. I know, a little uncomfortable, and that's okay. Here's the premise. The premise is, how do you plan on training a group of hands-on learners who are traditionally hands-on people who learn tactilely virtually? Now, I'm looking for creative answers. I love creative answers. The most creative answers will get a whole bag of internet stars. I farmed a whole bunch this morning, so don't worry, I won't run out of any. But I'm curious to know, given the directive, and this is all you've got to work with, you've got hands-on learners. This is how they operate. This is how they learn. How are you going to train them virtually? And I'm going to let Luke and Jay and Jill do their internet magic to break folks out into their respective groups. And again, I love creative answers. The more fun, the more wacky. Sometimes they can be, out there, totally cool. There is no wrong answers because I'm a big believer in work should be as fun as humanly possible because, hey, work is hard. You should have fun. So I'll let Luke, Jay, and Jill do their stuff, and I guess we'll come back. Alrighty, thank you. So I got to listen to some of the folks who had some ideas. Some of them were really fun, some were very practical, some were not as practical, but still very, very fun. So I'm hoping somebody may, get a couple folks. Remember, I still have this bag of internet stars I can give away for today. So I'm wondering who had some fun ideas. And I heard some people who have actually done this before. So I'm curious to hear from others.
So I can jump in because we had an interesting discussion. So I started with it. If you're going to if we use the example of it's a vehicle, that everybody gets sent a vehicle so that they can be hands-on right with the actual thing that they need to work with. If not that, maybe there are centrally located vehicles that are easy for people to get to do hands-on if that's going to work for them. But as I was talking, we got a lot of different things around this, but the value of getting feedback on the work that you're doing. As hands-on learners, these people are often good at doing problem solving, trial and error kinds of concepts. And so I also made the suggestion of, let's put a GoPro on their head so that they can be demonstrating back to the group or to the instructor to show what they're doing and get instant feedback on their approach and their quality of work, and just to ensure that it's happening not only correctly, but in the most efficient manner. So how's that, Eric?
I liked it so much I wrote it down.
I have a couple of things I could share. It's Molly Day here, apparently.
Hi, Molly.
So, hi, Molly. So we talked about that same thing, the GoPro, having like a pre-study and then sending out some sort of a kit so that the instructor would be doing, that the learner could see what the instructor is doing, and then the instructor can also see what the learner is doing at the same time. We also had just some kind of dreamy discussions about drones flying out to the location of the learner to be able to view and provide feedback somehow from that. We talked about VR, which we think is, seems a little on the dreamy side right now, but it's probably going to be a lot more mainstream within a short period of time. And if my group has anything else to add to that, please do. But those were kind of the main things that we discussed.
All right. And anyone else?
Yeah, we discussed similar things, but and the one different one we thought about would be like, a library of videos with different aspects of the technician or the person who's the hands-on learner would need to be able to do on the job, and that they could be searched out of a library of videos by the title or the step, maybe like a micro step that they need to do the job correctly, and then they could use those on the job.
Something I'd like to share too. The ideas that came out of our group was kind of inspired from the recent movie On a Wing on a Prayer.
We're having a hard time hearing you, Bridget.
Oh, sorry.
I want to try a different microphone source.
Oh, okay, can you hear me better now?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
I'll try and talk louder. Basically,
There you
we
go.
talked about being able to have maybe a cardboard kit sent to the home, or maybe even have the folks gather some household items from their house and build something. And so it kind of was inspired a little bit, the idea from the movie that recently came out on Prime. It's called On a Wing and a Prayer, where they build from soup cans and cardboard and scissors. They put together something to simulate being able to land an airport, and they actually helped somebody accomplish that. So anyway, I thought it was a great idea. You can bring that maybe and do it low cost if you have, something that you can fit it to. And then the group built like 3D printers are big out there too, right? So maybe that can be used, right? If you're trying to do something global. So.
All right, 3D printers. Cool ideas. So yeah, I don't think I've seen that movie before. So thank you. Appreciate everybody's ideas. I actually wrote down some of them because maybe I'll talk with Mike later about some of these. I did kind of give away what we ended up doing because this was our directive. Mike and I were sent the directive of, hey, we've got thousands and thousands of people who need training, and you can't really reach them because they're scattered throughout the United States, and there's only a couple of us. So what do we do? And along the same lines, I want to show this, which is, I know this is a bag of Legos. There's Lego, excuse me. It's singular, not plural. There's 6 bricks, and we were given the idea of you have to build a duck. You're only going to give you 6 of these bricks, and everybody's got the same thing, and you have to build a duck. And we had a room full of people, and we basically came up, everybody had different ducks because we all came to the same solution. We all know what a duck looks like, right? I say the word duck, you can picture a duck. And how we go about doing it is different. But we all came up with something that looks like a duck. As a matter of fact, I still have my duck. It is right here. And it reminds me that just because my duck does not look like those ducks does not mean I'm wrong. Doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means we came to the same solution in a different way. Okay. So I keep this on my desk as a reminder to myself that there's oftentimes different ways of doing it to get to the exact same solution. Now, I will share with you the problem that we are faced with is that there are two. Yes, that is right. Two locations for automotive collision repair facilities to go to. One's in Racine, Wisconsin. The other one's in Chicago. That's it. So that means that all of the repair facilities in the United States must come into these two areas, take time away from their busy schedules, time away from building cars and making money to go to this training. And often the trainings are not short. They are many days long. And in the collision space, Mondays and Fridays are the busiest because Mondays is when cars show up and Fridays are typically when cars go out. So there are thousands and thousands of technicians across the United States and Mexico and Canada that need this sort of training, and there's only two locations. So to get there, they have to take time off. They have to have very expensive travel to get there, and often these trainings are fairly repetitive. So many technicians who have been in the field for a very long time probably been doing the same stuff they're getting trained on 5, 10, sometimes 25 or 30 years. And they're coming back to train on something that they do pretty much every day. So that was another kind of wrench, in our problem. So what did we come up with? This was handed down through collaborative work with Mr. Chesney and Mr. Willis. Mr. Chesney was mentioned before. And what we kind of came up with was what we call the Repairify Institute. Has these 6 academies: Repairify Complete Academy, the ADAS Academy. Now, we use a lot of acronyms. So if there's an acronym that doesn't make sense, feel free to put it in the chat. I will respond as best I can. I still don't know all of them because there are so many, but ADAS stands for Adaptive Driver Assist Systems. Advanced Driver Assist Systems. So these are things like your rear view camera, your TPMS sensors, 360 cameras if you have them. So these are the things that we're training on. We're talking about diagnostics academies, the ICAR Alliance Academy, which I'll talk about in just a second, some sales and leadership academy, and then vocational support. So we were tasked with the amount of material that you see on the right. It's a very long set of criteria. But basically, these are all the things that we have to train on. And we have to train for people who come through our facilities on these type of materials. So we have a lot of partners, and we also have to partner with the sanctioning bodies, which is ICAR and ASE. ICAR being the collision sphere kind of training nonprofit that basically tries to train everybody as much as possible and also gives out accreditation. So if you ever need, for whatever reason, need to get your car repaired and you see the little iCar sticker sitting on the window, or if it's on their website, you know that they have certain credentials that lend them to being a, either a gold class or platinum status repair facility. ASE looks more like the mechanical side of things. So if you need something fixed with your engine or you need your brakes worked on, generally, these are going to be the people who are trained through ASE. So a number of partners that we work with, CCC, One, SEMA, Snap-on, et cetera. ATG being the automotive training group that we recently acquired, goes out and does these trainings in locations that are much more closer to the technicians themselves. So part of the directive that we were given was we need to come up with some locations for all these people to go to. So we have to set up these facilities that are within a couple hours drive of virtually any mechanic or technician in the United States. So that was the other kind of big directive that we were given. So through some audience analysis, we learned that the overwhelming majority of our learners are coming from the mechanical field. So these people are very hands-on type of folks. They tend to be mostly male. They tend to be older with what they say as years of experience. So in the upper right, you see one of our trainers from ATG showing an electrical board with a real live training class. And you see Alexa here on the right using a target that looks like a front camera for a vehicle. I can't tell you that every vehicle is a little bit different. I want to say that's the Ford target for the front facing cameras. And then on the bottom photo, you've got some of our typical learners that you would see in most of our classes. So these are the stereotypical hands-on type. They learn best when they have something in their hands. Don't necessarily learn great by just reading things. Some people are really good at that. I, unfortunately, am not. So these are the types that really like to get their, kind of hands dirty, and also like to get a sense of kind of what things look like and feel like, and they can kind of manipulate them. And that's how they do it. So they're very experiential type learners. These people also learn by acquired or lived knowledge. So that's passed on from person to person. And they, I've been doing it this way for 30 years. This is the way to do it. I know the handbook says this. This is a lot of something we get of this. The handbook says this, but this is the real way to do it. So we do get a fair amount of that too. This is also the group that will say things like time is money. Okay. The faster I can do something, the more accurate I can do something. I can do 4 things at once and make a lot of money. Then, that's the value that I bring. Time is money. And this is also the group that during trainings, what they will tell us is just give me the facts and nothing more, right? Just the facts. That's all I need. So when we do these trainings, we try to keep them as succinct as possible, to the point, and not give any extra added pieces that the person may or may not need. The other problem we run into is, many of you are probably familiar with this, the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is people who say they know something actually tend to be very confident that they know something. And then when pressed or tested, turns out they don't actually know as much as they thought they did. So confidence on the left hand, the y-axis, and then the x-axis is the top performers. So bottom performers on the left and top performers on the right, and their confidence level. So people who tend to do better actually have a less confident attitude, and people who tend to be pretty confident tend to also not necessarily know what they're doing. And one of the things that we get a lot through our trainings is, Eric, I've been doing this particular event for 20 years. I know exactly what I'm doing. I can do it in my sleep. I said, okay, so what we want to do is we want to be able to test that. We also want to figure out who is legitimately telling us that they know what they're doing, and maybe weed out those who don't. So that's kind of where we're getting into this adaptive learning, and I'll explain it more in depth in just a second. So as most people are aware, the most effective type of training is one-on-one mentorship. And this is Bloom's 2 Sigma problem, that basically, if we're doing some sort of mastery learning, the fastest and quickest way is one-on-one mentorship. And those people who get that type of mentorship tend to do much, much better and score much, much higher than even those who are doing a standard mastery learning course, or even better than the conventional classroom where you have a teacher up front and then everybody kind of just listening, very one-way type of communication. So let's move on to what adaptive learning is and how it kind of addresses that problem. There's a lot going on this screen. So I'm going to direct your attention to a couple pieces on the screen that I think are important for the actual concept itself. So adaptive learning is basically the combination of testing knowledge, immediate remediation, and then testing the person's confidence of whether they think they know that information or not. So the very big screen in the front is an example of a question or a probe that you may ask. And then you have to rate how confident you are in your answer. If you get it correct and you say, I knew it, or I know it, and I know this with 100% certainty, you move through the course much faster. If you are less confident and still get it right, that's okay. You'll still move on. You just won't move on as quickly. And if you get it wrong and high confidence, you're going to get remediated immediately. So many people that I noticed during our exercise said this exact same thing: immediate feedback. And when you have immediate feedback, you tend to learn more effectively. Now, when we talked about the 2 Sigma problem, this is a way to electronically give training to people and help mimic that one-on-one type mentorship to a large group of people that may not be available for every single trainer. I certainly can't do one-on-one training with every tech that we work with. So that's where that remediation comes in a lot. So on the bottom left, you'll see something, the self-assessment. And it got a little bit cut off on this slide, so I apologize. But there's a little slider, and it asks you, hey, how confident in this material you are. So if you say, I'm super confident, you put yourself on the far right of that graph, what it will do is it will send you racing through this material. And if you get it wrong, what it'll do is it'll remediate you, and it'll actually send you back and keep doing basically a similar type activity until you get it right with a decent level of confidence. So we're all getting to the same solution. Everybody who gets through this is getting the same amount of information. They're just going through it at different rates because we are showing who is confident and consciously competent, and who may not be so confident and may be overconfident and might be unconsciously incompetent. So we have to kind of find those people, okay? And with our trainings that people come in and say, Eric, I've done this one procedure for 20 years. I said, okay, cool. We can test you out of this very quickly. And as a matter of fact, we can get you through this. If you come past this in 10 minutes or less with a high degree of accuracy, we'll move you on. You don't have to keep doing this. So those who have struggled with this takes longer. Those who are easier goes much, much faster. Talk a little bit about the how and the why of adaptive learning. So the why of it is the how is an online delivery method that automatically adjusts to each learner. So many of you already kind of got to my answer too, which is the ability to remediate somebody right away when there's a learner who has a bit of a struggle in a particular area, right? So Joyce, great point. Brilliant example of ID without adding technological features to the learning experience. Correct. So the technology is pretty smart, and we'll figure it out as the person goes along. And I've got some graphs to kind of explain this here in a couple slides coming up. So the idea is that this will mimic and recreate the scale of that optimal teaching approach at a one-to-one mentor level. So that's the idea behind this. And again, got some graphs to kind of back some of this up. So we have some data and analytics that will help us with some of this. They use a little bit of an AI technology. It's not fully AI like ChatGPT, which I heard some examples in our breakout session, which I thought were great. I love out-of-the-box thinking. It's fantastic. So similar idea, maybe not full autonomous AI just yet in learning technology, but will help optimize the experience based on this. It will help personalize learning, and then it will help save time and effort. So if you've got the technician who comes in and says, Eric, I know all this stuff, and they go through it and they click through and they have a high degree of confidence, and they said, man, that only took me like 10 minutes. Exactly. You knew exactly what you were doing. We know that you know what you're doing, and then we can move you through this track much, much faster. I'll tell you a short little story, and this will kind of help things. This is what helped conceptualize it for me. I went to pick up my son from school one day. I said, hey, bud, how did it go? And I think he's 11 at the time. And he goes, oh, we had to take our state test today, Dad. I said, oh, okay. How did it go? He goes, I don't know. So what do you mean you don't know? He goes, well, the test was really weird. He said, in the beginning, It was super easy. And then he goes, I answered about 10 questions, and then it got super hard. Like I didn't know what they were talking about. Oh, okay. What happened? He goes, well, about 10 questions later, the questions got a little bit easier, and then a little bit harder, and then a little bit easier, and then the test was over. And that was it. And I said, well, how did you do? He goes, I don't know. I have no clue. I said, okay, cool. So we did find out he did fairly well. And that was an example that the schools are using to figure out where somebody is. So they start really easy. They ramp up the difficulty, go, oh, that's way too much because they were a little bit difficult, less difficult. Oh, that's too easy. And then they start kind of honing in on that baseline where that student is at. And the goal of this is not completion. We're not looking for somebody to complete this, that although that is the end effort here, the idea is we want them to get to the same level of competence at the end. You are probably very familiar with this. Unconscious incompetence on the bottom left, that's the red, that's the bad. No, we don't want that, that's bad. On the upper left, we've got conscious incompetence. So I know that I don't really know what's going on. Like I know I need some education here. Bottom right, you've got unconscious competence, which is you're doing the right things, but you don't really know that you're doing the right thing. And then in the upper right, you've got conscious competence, meaning I know what I'm doing and I know I'm doing the right thing. The goal is to identify the people who are in the bottom left. So if you look at the black graph in the upper right, you will see we've got somebody who's in a lot of unconscious incompetence, and then move them through this adaptive learning process to conscious competence. And we can get them there by doing a number of different things. You heard me say the word probes. And I can tell you that this process is, once it's done and it's working, it's fantastic. It works right out of the gate. It is a bit of a challenge to get things going, and it is intentionally difficult. So when I went through this process and I became a learning engineer for adaptive learning, one of the big pieces that they taught us was you have to make the questions and answers very, very specific, more specific than you're already thinking. And you have to make the answers very, very hard because we have to figure out who really does know their stuff and who is just really good at test taking. So there are some people who are just really good at that, and we need to weed those folks out so that we can test the actual material that we're giving. Earlier, I kind of talked about how does somebody go through the process, and you have 3 examples here: learner 1, 2, and 3. Notice that they all got to 100% proficient because they were able to go through it, get some information, and then remediate things that weren't working so well. So the easiest way to read this is you've got your green dots and some red dots. The green dot is the start, the red dot is the end. And every time you see a loop that goes around, that's when somebody had to go back and go, that wasn't so right. So let's go back and do this. And then you will also notice the size of the circles. The size of the circle indicates how much time was spent on that one particular item. If you notice the person on these are kind of the data points that you'll get from the adaptive learning program that we went through Area 9, the organization that we work with. So you'll notice the person on the left, 88% correct, very low unconscious incompetent, a little bit consciously incompetent, but that's okay. That's pretty normal. You'll notice the circles are very small, which means they spent very little time on those items. And then we're able to get through the material very quickly, and notice not a lot of loops there. Second person took longer, about double, a little bit more than double the time, still got to 100% efficiency. Only about 50% correct, had a lot of unconscious incompetence and a lot bigger circles, meaning they had to spend a lot more time on that particular item. And then they had to go through those loops a few more times, meaning they went through it, they didn't get it right. Okay, gonna go through it again. Still not 100% right. And then they went through it a third time, got it right. Okay, great, we can move on. Third person, still 100% efficiency. Now we're up into 30 minutes and how can that person get there? Well, they had to spend a lot of time on a couple items, okay? Molly, your question about proficiency versus efficiency is a great question that is coming up right now. So traditional efficiency, okay? So if we're looking at something, and I love the questions that like lead me right into the next thing, because that tells me, okay, we're going on this journey together. This is great. So if you're taking general traditional e-learning course, which takes between 45 minutes and an hour, and you turn that into an adaptive learning process, what you find is that time generally tends to go in half, kind of your average half, because not every bit of information is needed or needs to be remediated or taught on something, because some people know some of that material. So if they already know it, great, prove it to me and let's move on. So what we have found is that the time per learner is almost halved. So we're talking between a 45-minute and an hour session. Now that person's down to between 20 and 35 minutes, and they only really focus on the stuff that they don't know, or they have a high degree of unconscious incompetence. We're really trying to target those folks. A lot of data that you're going to get from this. This is a very heavily data-driven organization that we work with, and that's something that we really like, is that we can look back and go, okay, so how is this working? How are things, now that we've deployed this and we've got a bunch of learners taking this information, is it working? And is it working effectively? So one of the pieces that we use is called the heat map. So we can kind of find are people struggling on one particular area? Is one area way too easy? And we need to really hone in on this and make it a little bit more difficult. And is there a good mixture? Because if everything was green, that's not good. If everything is red, also not good. We want something somewhere in the middle, because we do want it to be difficult enough to where the person who is kind of middle of the road gets stuck and has to remediate. And somebody who does know it can relatively get through it fairly easily. So how does this kind of work at the end? If you've got people who have not taken it and then they take it, what essentially happens is you've got an improvement in conscious competence, a reduction in unconscious competence, another reduction in conscious incompetence, and then the big reduction in unconscious incompetence. That's kind of the big thing that we're targeting. So kind of lower left to upper right. That is the trajectory that we're looking for. To your point, yet again, Molly, time to metacognition. So learner one, that same example that we used from earlier, those same folks. Learner one, this graph will show you time to cognition, essentially. Did they get to the stuff that we were trying to teach them? So the first learner, you'll notice a very low amount of time. Actually, I think this took them about 12, 13 minutes, right? So somebody who is, middle of the road, about an hour, give or take. And then somebody who doesn't know it is going to take a lot longer, because they have to remediate over and over and over using different materials and different methods for doing that to get them to that. So depending on their conscious competence, as you can see, that's kind of the big factor here. Will move, if they are accurate and highly confident, they will move through material much more quickly. And then finally, as far as statistics, there's a lot of statistics. I didn't want to bore you with all the numbers, because we could nerd out literally all day on this stuff. I think it's really fascinating. But suffice to say, lots of stuff we can do and lots of stuff we can do look at. And we can also look at what are the most difficult objectives and find out where people are struggling. So when they're done with this, do we need to have a different learning opportunity for these particular things? So we're looking at, maybe pick the top 3. And then when they move to a different modality of training, maybe we can hit these topics a little bit harder. So that's another way we use this data. So there is as you heard me say, I did get the Learning Engineer certification through Area 9. And what I was told when I went through this is that of the people that go through it who have an MBA, master's degree or higher, who are instructional designers, do not complete or cannot complete and earn their certificate at the end of it. It is very difficult, and they said it's difficult for a number of reasons. So I have moved on to their next level, which they call a curator, which uses a bunch of these different electives that you see here on the right. But basically, there is a certification path that you can use through Area 9. The folks have been very nice to us, helping us along in this process and understanding kind of how the AI system works. So it is difficult, and even people who are very intelligent sometimes don't always make it all the way through. So that was the big bulk of it. If you have questions about adaptive learning, please throw them in the chat, because I'm going to move on to some of the other things that we're going to be doing to address the hands-on learner, but from super far away. So feel free, ask your questions. This is a great time to do it. I'll get to it if it comes through the chat, but I'll move on a little bit here. The other thing that we're doing, and I heard a lot of people say this, that they wanted to do some sort of virtual reality thing. And we've looked at that too, and we think it's a great idea. It is a bit of a lift in many places. So unfortunately at this time, the resources just aren't there to create a bunch of virtual reality. But I did really like the back and forth live training type of learning. I thought that was cool. So I think that is super fun. So I wrote that idea down, and maybe we can do some virtual sessions. We have some virtual training now, but it tends to be more one way. So if we can get it two-way, man, that would be the sweet spot. So we've also looked at augmented reality because of the system constraints and resources for all of our learners. Not everybody's going to have a VR system and a place to do it and time to do it and all sorts of things. But what else? What does everybody have, including technicians? They have a phone, right? I've got mine right here. And if you want, and you want to play along with this, you totally can. What you'll need to do is you'll need to go to the App Store on any device and download Bundle AR, the app. And if you would like, you can download our kind of pre-test, or our kind of test of this called AIO SEMA test, SEMA test. You can download that. And basically what will happen is you'll get a 3D image of our device. This is one of our devices. I've got one sitting right here. And what you need to do is you need to kind of point it. You see the picture on the left. You kind of need to point it at a flat surface. Any flat surface will do. A table, floor, doesn't matter. And then you'll hit the lower left button, the kind of the icon of the image. And then what you can do is it'll actually display it on that flat surface, and you can walk around it. Full 360 if you want to, and you can view the image. And I'm trying to work with our AR people to try and actually manipulate the device, be able to pushing buttons and that sort of thing. I think that's super fun. So there's a lot of applications for this. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing is working with possibly Google Glass, where our technicians are wearing safety glasses, as they all should be. And they have the augmented reality kind of up in front of them, kind of like if you're playing a video game and you've got, your HUD showing you all the information of what's going on. And then potentially bringing up the service information if they need it, so they can look at it and they can flip through the pages while they're looking at the car. They don't have to get up. They don't have to go to the computer. They don't have to do anything. They can just kind of flip through pages on their glass while they're actually touching the car. So that's something that I'm looking forward to. Question was the Area 9 adaptive platform the preliminary assessment step, or does it train your hands-on learner sufficiently? So that is a great question, and a little bit of both. So to answer your question, it's both. It is step one in our process, as Mike pointed out, but it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of weeding out who kind of knows their stuff and who doesn't, and one track goes this way, and another track kind of goes this way. And then also at the same time, it does get them to proficiency, as kind of the data showed. It does get everybody to the same exact spot. It just kind of does it sometimes in a different way, where you kind of have different tracks. I like to talk about our centers of excellence a little bit. These have been feng shuied a little bit to address all the different types of learning that we have. This particular building was originally slated to be our building, but unfortunately didn't work out. But we're still looking at different things. But you can kind of see the layout that we have. We've got hands-on experiences. We've got some classrooms that you can see in the photos here. We also do have a retail space too to kind of help keep the lights on. And then we've also got a virtual space, which I think is one of those blank rooms that has nothing in it. That is going to be our virtual training space for one-on-one interaction between an educator and the learners virtually. So to answer your question that came in, kind of what are the steps? So here's our basic steps. This is brought to you by Mr. Chesney and the way that they train aviation mechanics. This is also very similar to the way they train mental health people as well. Myself being in the mental health field for a number of years and my licensure process, this looked very similar. So we've got some core competency learnings. You've got our e-learning modules that have adaptive learning. Some do and some don't. Most of them do. We'll have also live online sessions. That's kind of that one-way communication. That'd be great if it'd be two-way. And then also in-person classroom as well. So any combination thereof to get them to the core competency. And then on top of that, we're going to have them hook up with a mentor, either virtually or in person, depending on the type of education that they need. And we're going to have them go through what we call just reps or repetitions. And the mentor then can say, okay, you've done this 5 times, but I see you do it with a great high degree of accuracy every single time. We don't need to do the full 20. But if somebody's got, let's say, a low degree of accuracy, low degree of confidence, and has some deficits in what they're doing, then they're probably going to have to do more reps until the mentor is sufficiently satisfied that the person is doing what they're supposed to be doing. Beyond that is an oral exam where folks will have to, basically be fired questions, and they'll have to answer those random questions that we have. And yes, thank you, Mike. You must demonstrate proficiency a certain number of times before moving on to the next step. So this is very linear, step 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, in a lot of these certifications that you see, there are between 4 and 6 competencies. And what we'll do is to save time and effort is we're not going to test on every single efficiency. What we're going to do is we are just going to take 2 or 3 of those, and then we're going to randomly select them, and then they must demonstrate those proficiencies. And so they basically have to be ready for all of those things. Question. See, everybody is with me. This means that my presentation went fantastic because the questions people ask or comments that come in are right in line with what is happening next. And the question was, mentor-mentee, how are you keeping standard and consistent evaluation? Fantastic. That was my next slide. Here it is, mentor-mentee. No way. Yes, with an H. Way. Very true. So yes, we're using mentor-mentee. So yes, Molly, you were 100% accurate. And that's the way we're going to track these particular things. So yes, have to train a lot of people very far away who are very scattered with very limited time ability, very limited resources, and oftentimes don't necessarily always want to be there because they're taken away from their job, they're losing money. You're already training me on this, Eric. I already know what I'm doing, et cetera, et cetera. So a few challenges that we are looking to tackle in large scale coming up shortly. Now, that is the end of my main presentation.
Eric,
yes,
if you would, please go back one step. I just want to reinforce the point. So on the left-hand side down at the bottom, you can see my repetitions. So we actually, in this mentor-mentee application, you can build a spreadsheet, if you will, of exactly what it is that the mentee needs to perform reps of. So you can customize this to whatever it is. And that way you can help to make sure that it is being applied consistently so that any one of my mentors, they're all operating off of the same checklist, if you will. And Area 9 is a subscription model. So don't know about the minimum number to make it affordable. I know what we're paying for it, but we have some growth plans associated with that that would make our situation unique in that. And Eric, how long did your first level of certification take you to complete?
I think it took me, because I was doing this during work hours. You know, you're going to have to juggle a fair number of things. You have to get a module essentially first, and then they will walk you through it. And there's a number of different their own modules that you have to take. I would say between 8 to 12 weeks, depending on how quickly you can go through it. I think just our time constraints, I think I did it in 6, but they say to block out, 8 to 12 weeks to get to that first learning engineer stage.
Now they do have learning engineers of their own. So if you wanted, you could hire them to create your content for you. The other really interesting thing about this is we actually can take our training content and put it into our internal learning management system, and all of the data flows into the Area 9 LMS. So our learners, our internal learners, have never even seen the Area 9 LMS, but that's where Eric and I go to gather all our data.
Lots of different ways to use the data.
Our internal, yeah, it's UKG or UltiPro's LMS, and I would not recommend it to anyone, but it came free with UltiPro. Get what you pay for.
Yeah, we do have other options that we're exploring. So with that said, thank you, Mike, for that information, for the updated information. If you have questions, you can direct them this way. If they need to get to Mike, I'll make sure that they get to Mike. But my email is eric.mcclellan@repairify.com. And as a little anecdote, when Jay said to me, "Hey, Eric, you like cars, right?" I said, "Yeah, I like cars." She goes, "Would you like to work for Repairify?" I said, "I've never even heard of Repairify." That sounds like a made-up name. And he goes, No, it is very real. So here we are. So
yeah, when
Mike,
my first conversation with Eric was, so let me tell you about your dream job, and he immediately, red flags went off, and he was very suspicious, to say the least. But fortunately, I was able to convince him that it was.
And Mike, there's a question about mentor-mentee. Is it an application that we purchased?
Yes. And if anyone is interested, I will, if I can find it quickly enough here, I will put the email address of our contact out in the chat. I've provided to some other people in the collision repair space, because this is a really big need in our industry. But yeah, I'll share the contact info, because it's a really cool technology. Give me one moment to see if I can find it.
All right. So Luke, Jay, Jill, that is the end of my material for today. Not sure what else you would like. Thank you. What learner feedback are we getting? That's a good question. Some of it is very good, which is, hey, I got through this really quickly. Thanks for the time. There are some organizations who are using adaptive learning for their legal requirements, their yearly requirement, such as HIPAA or compliance training or something to that effect. So they are finding that they can get through compliance training much faster. Our organization not using it for that because we already have something in place that's working. So instead of spending that 5-6 hours every year, they're finding that they're spending 2 to 3 hours every year doing compliance training. So I will share one funny anecdote though, which is one learner who we immediately identified as unconsciously incompetent, got caught pretty quickly by the learning, saying that, oh, this is baloney. This is not true. Only come to find out the person was a little too confident, and that person's supervisor was then able to kind of go to that person and do some one-on-one remediation with that. So we were able to kind of catch that person. So it's a little funny, but it worked out pretty good at the end. So actually pretty good. People like the ability to move through material quickly that they know. So they appreciate that. Takes them about 10 minutes just to prove that they know what they're talking about. We can do it at scale. Thousands of people all at the same time can prove to us, yeah, they really do know what they're saying. So yeah, it's good. How do you pair mentor-mentees, and does the pairing relationship last beyond reaching proficiency? Mike, you're the kind of in charge of the mentor-mentee part of things.
We find oftentimes that it does. However, what you are being mentored on will also have an impact upon who the best mentor is for that. So we have different mentors that are in different areas. So an individual might stay with one mentor for a while. In other cases, though, if I'm going off to learn the Volkswagen tool and my previous mentor didn't know the Volkswagen tool, then of course you'd have to have a new mentor. And choosing people to be mentors is always difficult. We have found that the extremely highly productive technicians are not usually the right people to be mentors. They don't want to slow down to show people how to do it. So definitely do some interviewing and some assessing of people before they step into the mentor role. And actually, mentor-mentee has a really robust training program for mentors built into it. So I would encourage people to avail themselves of that so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
And Mike, to your point, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to sort of add to that. So once you've identified who can be mentors, how does the matching occur? Is that a manual process?
Yes. In our world today.
Yeah, I was going to say to your point, and also to your point, Jill, same thing, which is some people who are just fantastic at their job, who are top performers, don't make great teachers. And also what we've found is that in the beginning, there was some initial resistance to getting these people to be mentors to train others. And well, can't we have some other process? Because they're worried about the high performers or the ones who are really good slowing down. In reality, what we found is that there's a small, brief window of slowdown and then a huge impact when you've got this person training for 3 or 4 people at a time. Now you're doing the work of 4 people at once in a very short period of time.
And yes,
do mentors
Dave,
receive any financial incentive?
Absolutely. So in a situation where we have a part-time or temporary mentor, we typically would bonus them for the weeks that they spent on the mentoring program. I do have 6 full-time mentors on the team right now. So they're totally compensated.
100%.
Yes, Jill agreed.
Yeah, those people are selected for their people skills, and so they actually have to have a dual competency. They have to be people, and they also have to be very proficient at their job. So the selective process is, well, selective.
Okay, well, we are getting close to time, but we do have a little more room. Are there any more questions before we wrap up today? All right. Well, let's give a big thank you once again to Eric and Mike for presenting for us today. I know I found it very interesting. We really appreciate it.
Oh,
Give a
our
little
pleasure.
Virtual round of applause. Yep. Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks for
Sorry.
the invitation.
Yes, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for hosting. And again, thank you, Frederickson, for all you do helping to connect us learning leaders.
Thanks again,
And
everyone.
yes, the Mollies took the day. That's true.
Yep.
And yes,
Moving
thank
forward,
you.
today will always be National Molly Day.
Excellent.